Today, we're gonna talk about the Spanish wealth tax and how it affects non-residents. This means people who have assets in Spain but spend less than 6 months a year in the country. You'll notice that the playback bar below is divided into sections. This way, you can easily skip to the section that interests you the most. And I have to tell you, this is an introduction video, meaning that I'll be trying to make everything as simple as possible. The truth is, the wealth tax in Spain is a very highly complex tax, that in some cases it depends on the double taxation treaties that Spain has with other countries like Germany, United States, or the UK. Alright, let's get down to business. In simple terms, the wealth tax is a tax on your net wealth. This means everything you own, from real estate, stocks, bank accounts, even boats or art, minus any debts you owe. Sounds straightforward, right? But here is where it gets tricky. As a non-resident, you're only taxed on the assets you own in Spain. That cozy villa you got in Benidorm or Javia, taxable. That new apartment you bought in Mallorca, also taxable. But the properties or investments you have outside of Spain are safe from this tax. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but how much of my wealth is actually going to be taxed? And here's the good news. Spain doesn't tax every single euro of your wealth. There's a threshold, usually 700,000 for non-residents, below which you'll pay nothing. Once you cross that line, the rates will be between 0.25% and 3.5% depending on your wealth. Say your villa in Alicante is worth 1.5 million and you have no debts in Spain. After subtracting the 700,000 exception, you're left with 800,000 euros of taxable wealth. Based on Spain's progressive tax rates, you'll be paying somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 annually, depending on the region where your assets are located. Okay, Daniel, that's great, but when do I have to file this tax? Very simple. First scenario is very logical, when you owe this tax after all deductions, and the second one, even if you don't owe this tax because exemptions cover everything, whenever your total assets exceed 2 million euros. After this, we'll go to the next point, and is why regional differences are important for this tax in Spain. Something you gotta know. The Spanish wealth tax isn't the same across the whole country. Each region, which in Spain we call comunidades autónomas, can set its own rules, discounts, and rates. For instance, it's not the same the wealth tax in Balearic Islands than in Alicante. That's why knowing the specific rules about every region is key to do a good job. First thing we gotta understand is that the Spanish central government offers a general 700,000 exceptions for non-residents. However, each region of Spain can lower or increase these exemptions. Alicante, which is part of the Valencias region, offered a 500,000 general exceptions for non-residents. Meanwhile, Balearic Islands offers a 3 million euros exception for this tax. You can see it's a big difference. Here's something very important that you should know, and it's the fact that the wealth tax is a personal tax. And what does that mean? It means that this tax is assessed individually for each person, not collectively for a household or a family. Let me explain this very clearly with an example. Let's say you own a property in Alicante, which is part of the Valencias region. As I said, the general exemption here is 500,000 euros. Now, let's imagine that your property is valued at 1 million euros, and for simplicity, I mean, this is not a real case, but it's a good case so you can understand it. Let's say that you have no other assets in Spain like bank accounts, jewelry, art collections. Your share of the house's value would be 500,000 euros, the same as your wife's. Since none of these values exceeds the general exemption of that value, I don't want to say 500,000 all the time, neither of you would owe any wealth tax. And why this matters? Because if the house were only registered under one person's name, the entire 1 million euros would be attributed to that individual. In this case, there would be a taxable amount of 500,000 euros. In contrast, by splitting ownership, you could avoid paying any wealth tax in Spain. Okay, Daniel, I understood what's the wealth tax, what are the general exemptions about, the difference between regions, but how can I pay this tax? This is what I'm going to be answering now, but just before going into this point, I just want to make a short recommendation, and is that you hire a professional. Not only because I specifically do this, doesn't matter if it's myself or other professionals, but what I want to say is that I have seen some people that because they wanted to save a couple hundred euros, they ended up with sanctions from the Spanish tax agency, and these are no joke. To declare the wealth tax, you'll need to fill out the Model 714 or Modelo 714. This is the official form used to report your tax taxable assets in Spain. Wealth tax declarations are filed alongside your non-resident income tax. This means between early April to end June. Before I finish the video, I need to talk to you very briefly about a new tax that can affect the wealth tax, and this is the Impuesto sobre las Grandes Fortunas, also known as Solidarity Tax on Large Fortunes. This tax, introduced by the Spanish government in 2022, was initially temporary but has since been made permanent following a decision by the Constitutional Court in 2023. Its main goal? To counteract the generous wealth tax exemptions offered in some regions like Madrid, where the tax was effectively reduced by 99%. It's a complementary tax to the wealth tax. This means that even if your regions offer significant reductions or exceptions, if your net wealth surpasses 3 million euros, you'll have to pay this tax, or not, because the law was bad written and there are some holes there which you can use. But I will be treating this specifically in another video because it's very interesting, and come on, this is an introduction video. We are about to finish. Now you're seeing the tax rates of this Solidarity on Large Fortunes tax. In future, we'll dive into some practical topics, like what happens if you don't pay the wealth tax, how to minimize your tax liability when it comes to wealth tax. There are manners and manners, but I want to do specific videos about this because it's something that has to be very well explained. I want to also do it while I'm filling out the models, so you can also learn how to do it. This is my job, but I want to make sure that every non-resident has the tools to do them themselves. As I said, if you need professional advice, feel free to reach me out, or my father, which, as I said, has been a lawyer for more than 35 years. We are located in Moraira and Denia. This is the Costa Blanca, but we offer also our services in Ibiza and Mallorca. You have all the information down in the comments, and well, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye bye!